Hello and welcome to this week's Movie Math. Now, as you might recall, I often refer to Dwayne Johnson as franchise steroids. So potent that he's now become his own standalone drug, able to support his own franchises. But for a while there, when your franchise wasn't doing well, like G.I. Joe or Fast and Furious, you gave yourself a little injection of Dwayne Johnson, right? But it looks like Jeremy Renner has a similar reputation building in Hollywood, but one that's not quite so complimentary. And that's that he's brought in to show just how important the original star of a franchise is to said franchise. As you might recall, he was brought into Mission Impossible to threaten Tom Cruise when Tom Cruise was jumping on sofas, and Paramount was like, if you don't behave, Tom Cruise, we're going to give this franchise to Jeremy Renner, which I think created a little bit of tension between the two of them, especially if you when you watch Ghost Protocol, you can see that in the way the edit is done. Although to Tom Cruise's credit, he did keep Jeremy Renner around, maybe just to remind him who's boss, but Tom Cruise has definitely taken control back of that franchise, particularly with Rogue Nation. And now, sure enough, Matt Damon has shown that there's only one Bourne when he has returned to the Bourne franchise with Jason Bourne post Jeremy Renner's Bourne Legacy entry a few years ago. Now, that opened with 38.1, and he really did Matt Damon a favor there because he lowered the bar for the last entry for that franchise. Because Jason Bourne opened at number 1, as did the Bourne Legacy, to Renner's credit. But while Jason Bourne opened with 60 million, the Bourne Ultimatum, the last Matt Damon entry, opened with 69, and that was 7 years ago. So when you factor in inflation, there has been a little bit of a dip for the franchise. But still, this is a fantastic return to form after the Renner entry, and I'm sure that Universal is very, very happy to have Matt Damon back in the fold. And with this debut, particularly in comparison to the other movies coming out this summer, I think that it's safe to say that the Bourne franchise is not only back for one more round, but probably multiple rounds in the future. And I think that, as I said in my review, they've positioned it. Some people felt that it was a little bit of the same old. I enjoyed the film quite a bit, but I think that, after you've seen it, you can see that they are positioning themselves to have a little bit of a different situation with the next entry. And a next entry there shall be. Because even though it didn't match the Bourne Ultimatum, it did beat out Bourne Legacy, and it is the second biggest opening ever for Matt Damon's career. Also, when you look at this year's box office numbers, Jason Bourne was able to open in the same range as X-Men Apocalypse and Star Trek Beyond. That's amazing company for what is a much smaller film in terms of scope. And, the budget was $120 for this, but still, it's certainly, I think, a more affordable film for the studio than those other two. It also happens to be, at least so far, the 9th biggest debut of 2016. So that's excellent. It's also doing very well overseas, opening at the number 1 position. When they tally overseas box office, they just have overseas. And the number 1 movie outside of the United States this weekend was Jason Bourne with 50 million. That's the best foreign debut ever for a Bourne film. So again, it's just another nice, headline to go along with the Matt Damon's return to the franchise. So while these aren't like the most amazing numbers you've ever seen, I think that it's a very nice news story for both Universal and Matt Damon. What's interesting, though, is that Alicia Vikander was brought on. They got rid of poor Joan Allen, and they brought in a much younger actress, an Oscar-winning actress, not when she was cast, but still, I think to try and maybe, broaden the appeal of the franchise. But it didn't really work. 55% of the audience was male, 60% of the audience was over the age of 35, which is what you would expect for a franchise that's been around as long as Jason Bourne. Basically what that means is that the original fan base is still there, but they're not adding new fans over the years. Because keep in mind, the last Jason Bourne with Matt Damon came out 7 years ago. So Vikander, and some of the later posters, they were giving her very prominent positioning on there. She didn't really bring anybody in, which is a little bit worrisome, particularly because she's the new Lara Croft. I think that shows that her management and PR team really needs to work to raise her profile with the general movie-going audience, because I think she skews a little bit older in her appeal because she's really just been an awards actress up until now, right? That's who knows her, people who follow the award ceremonies, and that's an older crowd as well. So I think that she didn't do too much publicity for the film, to be fair, but still, I think the numbers should have been a little bit better with her involvement. But anyway, speaking of female appeal, Bad Moms did very well with women. Bad Moms was strikingly 80% female, its audience, but interestingly enough, 48% over the age of 34, so it skewed a little bit older. But I think that is such a strong turnout for the film, and it had opened so big on Friday that some people felt that it would do $30 million for the weekend, which would really have been spectacular. The number is still did very well with 24, but still, if it had done 30, that would have blown everyone's mind. And on Friday, a lot of people were like, "What is happening?" So I think that a lot of development executives at studios won't forget that Friday number and will be like, well, if a movie starring Mila Kunis and Kristen Bell from Styx Entertainment can open with $23 million, imagine if we had a bigger studio with bigger talent, bigger stars, I think we could do even better. Clearly, there is a demographic of upset and disgruntled moms who aren't going to take it anymore, and they would like a movie marketed toward them. So expect some kind of copycat movie in the coming months. I mean, if any development executive is on the ball, as they should be. But sometimes, as we know, they're not. But this is very good for Mila Kunis, who hasn't had a strong box office hit in a very long time. The last thing she did was Oz the Great and Powerful, but that really wasn't her movie, and that was like a big Disney tentpole, live-action fairy tale. But this is very nice for her, very surprising. She's pulling her weight in the Ashton Kutcher, the Kutcher-Kunis household. She's, of course, married to Ashton Kutcher, who is insanely wealthy after his 2.5 Men deal. But this is also very big for Styx Entertainment. Styx is one of the newer distributors, and this is their biggest opening to date. The previous record holder was half of that, with $11.8 million for The Gift last year. So they are also growing very nicely. And interestingly enough, this is the second time that Mila Kunis and Kristen Bell made a movie together. They made one back in 2008, forgetting Sarah Marshall, but of course Jason Segel was the star there, and Jason Segel should get back on it because his two, leading ladies, have surpassed him, at least for now. But you never know. Sometimes, Hollywood is the long game. It's not a sprint. Also, speaking of duos, behind the camera, John Lucas and Scott Moore, this is going to allow them to live to make another movie. Because, while they did very well they wrote Four Christmases, that raunchy Vince Vaughn, Reese Witherspoon holiday movie, but their real claim to fame was writing the first Hangover movie. Then they also did Ghosts of Girlfriends Past, 21 and Over. They've had a spotty track record. So because of The Hangover, they were able to move from being screenwriters to also directors, but then 21 and Over, But then they got this opportunity with Bad Moms, and they made the movie for just $20 million, very clever. And so now I think that while this isn't like amazing, I don't think they're going to get they're not going to become the new Russo brothers out of this. And I think that the Duffer brothers over on Stranger Things on Netflix have a little bit more heat. But still, as I said, at the very least, they'll live to make another movie. This will allow them another opportunity to, get to try and see what they can do at the box office. But speaking of duos behind the camera, well, John Lucas and Scott Moore can celebrate. The same can't be said of Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman. Now, these guys were the Catfish guys. Remember them? So you follow these people, you can kind of see how they get how they are able to parlay one little success into like a bigger opportunity. And that's the way you climb the ladder of success in Hollywood, right? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Again, the name of the game is just to stay alive and stay on the board. But I think the Catfish guys won't disappear, but they certainly don't have as good an outcome this weekend as Lucas and Moore have. So they did Catfish. They were able to then take that success and get the Paranormal Activity gig, and they directed 2 of those movies, Paranormal 3 and 4, and they did pretty well. But, now they want to go and try and be their own filmmakers, and so they made Nerve, and Nerve didn't do too great, even though it got a head start by opening on Wednesday. It opened in 8th place with just $9 million. And I think this is a good example of, we've had a lot of discussions about the importance of star power. And many of you, and even some people in the trades, believe that it's not important. But I'm telling you that star power is a factor, right? And sometimes today, it's lack of star power. Now, you can use untested talent. I mean, look at Teresa Palmer over in Lights Out. That movie's doing great. And Teresa Palmer has certainly had a lot of clunkers in her past. I don't even think that Lights Out is going to necessarily help her career. I think it's going to help James Wan's career. But anyway, I think that with Emma Roberts and Dave Franco, I think that they are big enough names. Teresa Palmer's kind of like a non-entity, right? But with these two individuals, they're known. So I think that this just goes to show that maybe the Nerve movie would have been better off with untested, unknown talent than going with talent that's been in large part rejected by audiences. Because I think that for the amount that this was pushed by Lionsgate, it should have done a little bit better. Lionsgate, man, sure are having problems with launching their material. I wonder if, again, as we've discussed, their really aggressive copyright claiming has affected this film as well. I mean, again, as we've discussed, they've shut down all fan discussion of their properties, and we'll see what happens with Power Rangers. Power Rangers is going to be tough to kill. There's so much interest in it, but if anyone can do it, it's Lionsgate. Although to the Catfish duo's credit, to Joost and Schulman's credit, they made this movie also for just $20 million, so at least it's got that going for it. And they did get younger moviegoers out, which has been a problem for Hollywood these days. 63% of the audience was female, 78% was under the age of 25. So they got younger moviegoers to come out, but they didn't get enough moviegoers to come out. Then those are the new releases. As for the rest of the top 10, Star Trek Beyond in its second weekend has already passed the century mark, which is encouraging, and it's up to 160 worldwide. But it has 250 to 300 million to go before it gets in the same ballpark as its two predecessors. So we'll see. I don't really know, as I've said with my review, if I would make a Star Trek 4, but I think the reviews overall were pretty positive. And I think that they did a good thing that a lot of Star Trek fans were pleased. So if they can at least get those numbers up there, then by all means make a fourth entry. But right now, it's pretty far behind the other two. But again, it's only week 2. Then Life of Pets, Secret Life of Pets, very good hold. It's up to 300 million domestically and almost 400 million worldwide. But still, if you look at the Illumination Entertainment lineup, it's no Despicable Me or Minions. That's still the crown jewel franchise for that animation studio. But Ghostbusters cannot claim a good hold, and they fell again in the 50th percentile in their third weekend. They crossed the century mark. They're at 106 domestically, but only 158 worldwide, and they're not going to China. And so that 500 million number that Paul Feig himself admitted was the goal seems very unlikely at this point. Also, Spy, Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy's previous collaboration, which is a really good movie. Ghostbusters is a fun movie, but it's not as good as Spy. And Spy only managed to make 235 worldwide. So I don't know how they felt that same duo, they could double. I know that the Ghostbusters brand is strong, but, to be able to double those earnings seems like a really wishful thinking on the part of Sony. But to Spy's credit, the movie only cost $65 million to make, whereas Ghostbusters was like $144. So, they more than doubled the budget, I guess, hoping they would double the box office, but that does not seem like it's going to happen. We'll see what happens with Ghostbusters. Sony might decide to move forward with it anyway. I think that they should add some male Ghostbusters to the lineup if they want to salvage that franchise. I wouldn't or as I said, a male version of the Sigourney Weaver character from the first movie. They're going to have to do some serious olive branching with the male fans because they just have to find a way to move forward with such a powerful brand. Now, as for China, Ghostbusters is not going there, but Finding Dory's already in China, and it's in South Korea, and it's in Japan. It just hit the UK, where it did beat out Jason Bourne, but it was close. But Finding Dory now is pretty much a worldwide release, and it's at 830.5 million, which is very, very good. But I don't know if it's going to make it to $1 billion at this point, especially because it's already playing in Asia. That would be what would supercharge it to add that extra 170. But we'll see. Never say never. There could be pockets of box office awaiting. Maybe it will do huge business in the UK, but it did just open with like around 11 million. So, the numbers in these other countries that it still has to hit, not many left, are smaller than what it could earn in the United States and in Asia. So I think Finding Dory probably will come in just under $1 billion. Now, as for this coming weekend, Suicide Squad, of course, is hitting theaters. There are crazy projections for what it's going to do. It's, I think on the conservative end, it's supposed to do over $100 million opening weekend. What it really needs to do is beat Guardians of the Galaxy, which has the current record holder for an August debut with 94.3 million. That's the number it needs to beat to be in a good space. Everything else is just icing on the cake. And then another movie does dare open opposite Suicide Squad. The Founder was supposed to open this weekend. That's the Michael Keaton McDonald's Oscar contender from the Weinstein Company, but they pushed that to a limited release in December and a wide release in January, which I think was a good idea, not only for its awards potential, but nobody wants to open opposite Suicide Squad, except for Luc Besson, whose EuropaCorps is opening a family film, 9 Lives, with Kevin Spacey, who has had 9 lives in the entertainment industry. You have to admire Kevin Spacey's scrappiness. But I think that Luc Besson is crazy with his EuropaCorps banner. He's, of course, self-distributing now in the United States. He's not partnering up with a U.S. distributor. EuropaCorps is trying to be very aggressive, and we'll see how they do. I think they botched their Valerian Comic-Con presentation because they showed footage in Hall H, but they didn't release anything. They didn't even release any new stills to the public, and therefore nobody was talking about Valerian despite that Hall H presence. So we'll see. I think he still has to get a little bit of a grip on how to publicize his movies in the U.S. space, but, there's always a learning curve, so we'll see. And, he shouldn't have talked trash talk about Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. I think he'd rather surprise everyone than not live up to his boasts. We'll see. We'll see. But I think 9 Lives obviously is going to get just completely decimated by Suicide Squad. Although some of you have pointed out, I'm not sure if 9 Lives opens in the UK as well this weekend, but Suicide Squad is no one under 15 can see the movie in the UK, even with an adult, which I think is weird. If that's at least the information that was given to me by some of the BTT UK viewers. So I guess my takeaway from that is that at least you can see 9 Lives. Or Finding Dory. We'll see. I think a lot of people will be sneaking into Suicide Squad if that's the case. So anyway, write your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for going over the box office with me, and you can check out some more episodes right now.